Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Hui Yuhao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao weren't too clear about the meaning of her remark, but everyone else burst out laughing. Shu Sanxi's face immediately turned red, and the nearby Jiang Nan Nan lowered her head, her face even redder than Shu Sanxi's. Shu Sanxia stomped furiously towards Bei Bei and tried to push the cigar into his mouth. Since you keep repeatedly talking about me, you should also get a taste of it before speaking. But Bei Bei wasn't planning to open her mouth even if the alternative was death, and so, he struggled with all his might. As the two of them were evenly matched in strength, Shu Sanxia had no way to pin him down. Wang Yang also stopped laughing with great difficulty and said, "All right. Don't be noisy. Kaitu, what are the effects of your food-type martial soul?" Kaitu snorted coldly and didn't respond. Wang Yang laughed and said, "Fine. I promise that no one will laugh at you, but you can't blame us either. Your soul incantation was just too strange, we couldn't help but laugh. Anyway, you should tell us. It might be important when fighting our enemies tomorrow." Kaitu replied somewhat unwillingly. "The one I used just now was my first soul skill. It's called mind-stimulating thick cigar. Each cigar can stay lit for around 20 minutes. When smoked, it will strengthen both the user's mind and spiritual power. This type of soul skill is rather fitting for someone like Yu Hao. If he smokes the cigar, I can assure that his spiritual type soul skills will experience an amplification of at least 10%. After hearing his explanation, all the smiling people in the room looked at each other in dismay. Their smiling expressions disappeared and were slowly replaced with shock. Wang Yang was the most surprised. It can strengthen spiritual type soul skills. And it can amplify his skills by at least 10%. Kaitu nodded and said, "Yes. Isn't it quite normal for food type soul masters? However, in the end, we are not as good as auxiliary type soul masters. I've heard that there is a member of the Nine Treasures clan in the second year whose soul skills have an astonishing level of amplification." Wang Yang said, "Granted, but she needs to continuously consume soul power to maintain the effect. On the other hand, you don't have to expend any additional soul power after creating the cigar. And on top of that, food-type soul skills require the least amount of soul power. As if that wasn't enough, won't your soul skill also get stronger as your cultivation progresses?" Kaitu thought about it for a bit and said, "That's true. My consumption of soul power isn't high. However, since I usually use most of my soul power on soul tools, I have never paid much attention to this useless amplification skill. The main use of my soul rings is to increase the rank of my soul power, and between my 4 soul skills, the only one I use regularly is the first one. And that's only because it has the ability to increase my accuracy when using soul tools. Since the other 3 aren't of any use to me, all I have is a vague idea about their effects." Wang Yang looked at the crowd and asked in a grave tone, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Dai Yueheng replied, "It seems the martial soul department has missed out on a very talented food-type soul master." Wang Yang nodded in agreement. "Exactly," Kaitu was bewildered, startled. "Are you talking about me?" Wang Yang said, "Let me ask you this. Given sufficient time, how many cigars can you create with your current level of soul power?" Kaitu replied, "A lot of them. At the very least 1,000, I think. However, if they are not used within 2 days, these cigars will expire and won't have any effect." Wang Yang's eyebrows shot up. 2 days? You're saying that the cigars created by your soul skill can last for 2 days before going bad? Kaitu replied as if it were obvious, "Yes. However, if we compare them to normal cigars, they expire really quickly." Wang Yang howled angrily after a moment of reflection, "Quick, your ass. Do you know that usually, the things produced by other food-type soul masters can only last for a few hours? A preservation time of more than 3 hours is already considered a major feat. If it can last for 12 hours, the soul master can be considered a genius. And you, who can preserve his creations for a whole 48 hours, are speaking of it as if it was something completely ordinary. If we make full use of your abilities, your soul skill could allow an army of 1,000 soldiers to increase their strength with your cigars over a period of several hours. Do you understand? And when it comes to your teammates, you can definitely provide them with 1 or more sets of cigars before every battle. When they smoke them during the battle, they'll receive a boost from your skill. However, you would have already recovered the soul power used to create the cigar long before the match. In other words, it'll be as though there was an additional soul master on our team. Hikaitu scratched his head and said, is it really that impressive? The effects of my other soul skills might be even better. Wang Yang slammed the table and got up. What are you waiting for? Quickly, tell us about your other 3 soul skills. Let's see what bomb you're going to drop this time. At this moment, Wang Yang felt his heartbeat speed up. All this time, he had thought that the biggest shortcoming of this team was the lack of an auxiliary-type soul master. Without an auxiliary-type soul master, the team wouldn't have an opportunity to explosively increase its overall power during a match. And never would he have expected that a super-talented food-type soul master like Hikaitu would be hidden in plain sight. How could he remain calm after such a revelation? Wang Yang's previous explanation had only mentioned some of the advantages of having a food-type soul master. Although auxiliary-type soul masters could amplify abilities to a larger degree, the amplification wouldn't last for too long. For a long drawn-out team battle, a food-type soul master would surely be more useful than an auxiliary-type one. Despite the auxiliary-type soul master's short-term advantage, among tool soul masters, both of them had their strong points. This daddy has a large cigar, this daddy has a long cigar, this daddy has a thin cigar. Amidst everyone's violently twitching faces, Hikaitu activated all 3 of his soul skills, causing 3 cigars to immediately appear in his hand. The form and the color were the same as the first cigar. However, all of them differed in size. All right, Hikaitu said in an obedient manner, my large cigar, no, my second soul skill, is called the strength amplifying large cigar. I haven't used it much, so I don't know how much it can increase someone's strength by. You guys are free to test it out. As for my third soul skill, it's called the defense amplifying long cigar, and is a 1000-year soul skill. Considering what level it is, I reckon that it's more effective than my first and second soul skills. Finally, my last soul skill is called the soul power amplifying thin cigar. It has no use to me, thus I haven't used it yet. Wang Yang forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva and stared wide-eyed at Hikaitu. In other words, your 4 cigars can strengthen spiritual power, strength, defense, and soul power. Heavens! Fan Yu, that bastard. He actually let a genius food-type soul master like you become a soul engineer. I really want to go beat him up now. You aren't allowed to curse at my teacher, Hikaitu angrily retorted. Fan Yu's place in his heart was akin to that of a father's, even though his usual straightforwardness covered up most of things hidden in the deeper recesses of his heart. Nothing could replace the respect he held for Fan Yu. Without him, he probably would have died at the hands of his assailants long ago. I'm sorry. I just got a bit too excited, Wang Yang hurriedly said. However, I just couldn't help but get a bit excited over your soul skills. Come on, let's not talk about this for now. I order you to create 10 of each of your cigars right now, as a trial. Teacher Wang, can I not partake? Bei Bei asked bitterly. No way, Wang Yang resolutely replied. Every single one of you has to try them out. If you have Kaitu's soul skills supporting you, your comprehensive strengths will be increased by at least 10%. Furthermore, even though his cigars can't be used simultaneously, all of you can choose one according to your specialty. Combined with the fact that these cigars are good for 2 days, they'll be essential tools for you guys on the battlefield. The advantages gained from having the support of a food-type soul master were quickly revealed. If Hikaitu had just been an auxiliary-type soul master, he definitely wouldn't have been able to use any of his soul skills 10 times in a row like right now. However, Hikaitu was able to do so for all of his soul skills easily. The conference room table was rapidly filled with a pile of cigars. There were thick ones, thin ones, large ones, and long ones. Truly, everything that they needed was there. Shusansha smiled mischievously at Bei Bei. Come, brother, there's no need to be polite. Actually, they taste quite good. Just think of it as us enjoying our blessings together. Everyone, let's all enjoy Kaitu's cigars together. Nobody will think that you're mute if you don't shut up. Jiang Nan suddenly flew into a rage as she looked towards the table full of cigars in front of her. Her charming face had become somewhat pale. Only then did Shusansha realize that his words had been a bit too harsh. He immediately shut up due to the embarrassment he felt. Despite this, Wang Yang didn't even seem to notice the resentment on Jiang Nan's face. He immediately lit one of the spirit-stimulating thick cigar, then placed it in his mouth and inhaled deeply from it. The three disciples from the inner courtyard were clearly much more resistant towards Hikaitu's soul incantation, as even Ma Xiaodao lit up a cigar and inhaled from it without giving it too much thought. Thus, the other members of the preparatory team had no choice but to unwillingly light their own cigars. When they realized just how effective Hikaitu's cigars were, they gradually became numb to the embarrassing soul incantations that he had to recite. In any case, his soul skills lasted for 2 days, thus they wouldn't need to listen to his incantations when he used them most of them. However, despite the evidence of their usefulness, there were still a few people who were still somewhat unwilling to use his cigars. The person who was most opposed to it wasn't Jiang Nan or Xiao Xiao, who were girls, but was actually Wang Dong. No matter what, Wang Dong absolutely refused to test the effects of Hikaitu's cigars. Hu Yuhao tried to persuade him for an extremely long time, but he wasn't willing to relent no matter what. Even though Xiao Xiao and Jiang Nan were unwilling, they still accepted a set of cigars. Helpless, Hu Yuhao could only keep an extra set of cigars as a reserve. Wang Yang gazed at the steadfast Wang Dong with a somewhat helpless look on his face. It's fine if you're simply unwilling to try them. However, I suggest that you keep a set on you, just in case. Wang Dong shook his head forcefully. No. Wang Yang furrowed his brows, but only said, all right then. Now then, let's come up with a few plans for the upcoming round-robin tournament. Earlier, I said that there would be 3 types of combat during the round-robin section of the tournament. Considering the level of strength we revealed during the first round, there's no doubt that our group will only contain 8 teams. At least from the others' team standpoints, they'll only be fighting for a qualifying spot in the tournament. To them, we're guaranteed to qualify. We can use this mindset of theirs against them in order to make our tactics more flexible. There will be a total of 6 to 7 teams participating in the round-robin tournament, who will be split into a total of 8 groups. Of these, 3 groups will have 9 participating teams, while the remaining 5 groups will have 8 teams. In other words, we'll have to fight 7 matches in our group. If we win a match, we'll get 2 points, if we lose a match, we won't get any points, and if we draw, each team will receive 1 point. 4 groups will have a match every day, thus a cycle of matches will be completed every 2 days. After 7 cycles and the remaining matches from the groups with 9 teams are completed, the round-robin section will be done. I reckon that the round-robin portion of the tournament will last for 15 to 16 days. Ling Luochen should be recovered by the 4th cycle or so, and if their recovery goes smoothly, Ma Xiaodao and Dai Yueheng should be recovered by around the 6th cycle. When that happens, our strength team's strength will increase dramatically. We'll know which group we've been placed into along with who our opponents are tomorrow morning. With our reputation, we'll most likely be the first ones up during the round-robin tournament as well. The most important thing you all have to do is ensure that Yu Hao doesn't make a move. The 1v1 elimination fight isn't just fought by a single person. On the contrary, the loser of the fight steps down, while the winner continues fighting. This goes on until all 7 members of a team have been completely defeated. Because of this, you must be wary of enemy soul engineers. If we draw a 1v1 fight, I'll do as much as I can to create the best lineup possible based on their abilities. You all will just have to do your best. The last mode of combat is the 2-2-3 fight. Normally, 2-2v2 matches will be held before the 3v3 match. If we win both 2v2s, we won't even need to fight the 3rd match. Because of that, I've tentatively put Bei Bei and Jiang Nan on one team, and Shusansha and Kaitu on the other team for the 2 teams that will go out in the 2v2 matches. Hu Yuhao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao work extremely well together, but we can't let them go out and fight. Because of that, they'll be the participants for the 3v3 match. Shusansha had a gloomy expression on his face as he said, Teacher Wang, why didn't you put Jiang Nan and me in a team together? The 2 of us know each other well, thus we'll definitely work well together as a team. Jiang Nan almond-shaped eyes widened. Who's the one that's familiar with you? Stop trying to worm your way into being intimate with me. Wang Yang interjected, this is a competition, not the place for you 2 to murmur endearments to one another. The reason that I've placed you all together like I have is because your abilities are much more compatible with Kaitu's. Your focus is on defense, while his is on attack. As for Jiang Nan, her quick-wittedness is better suited when combined with Bei Bei's strong attacks. If she were to team up with you, I'm afraid that she wouldn't even be able to exhibit 30% of her true strength. Jiang Nan, who usually didn't talk much, immediately nodded without a shred of hesitation and said, "Teacher Wang is wise." Xu Sanqi's expression immediately sank at, but since this had to do with their arrangements in the competition, he didn't think that it would be appropriate to harp on about this matter. Wang Yang said, "The basic arrangements will thus be like this. Now then, the most favorable styles of competition for us are actually the 1v1 and 2-2-3 fights. On the other hand, team battles will the easiest for us to reveal flaws to our opponents in. I have to emphasize this point once again. During the competition, all of you must pay attention to your opponent's soul tools, as competitors are allowed to utilize simple soul tools in battle. Yu Hao definitely can't repeat his attack pattern after what happened in the first round, but the deterrent effect your team has is still present. Furthermore, Yu Hao, you can't hold back with your spiritual detection either while the others are competing. We have to do everything in our power to emerge victorious and ensure that we uphold the Academy's glory. When the time comes, I'll be commanding you guys on the field. I hope that you guys can carry out my commands at that time." "Yes." The 7 team members from the outer courtyard replied in uniform. Wang Yang finally stood up and said, "Make sure to get some rest tonight, everyone. You all need to ensure that you're in peak condition for tomorrow. None of you are allowed to leave tonight." Dismissed. Once Wang Yang had finished speaking, everyone stood up and left the conference room. As Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong were walking towards Hui Yuhao's room together to cultivate, Hui Yuhao suddenly sensed something. His gaze instantly landed on the other end of the corridor afterwards. A handsome youngster that appeared to be around 14 or 15 years old stood at the other end of the corridor and was currently burning holes through Hui Yuhao as he stared at him. Hui Yuhao's gaze immediately froze over. He was immediately able to tell, based on the white, skin-tight clothing that the other party was wearing, as well as from the direction that the other person had appeared from, that the other party was a student from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. "You're known as Hui Yuhao, right? Remember my name, I'm Xiao Hongchen. I'll definitely defeat you." The handsome youngster then made a thumbs-down sign towards Hui Yuhao. A cold glint flashed through Wang Dong's eyes, but Hui Yuhao immediately stopped him from moving by placing his hand firmly on Wang Dong's shoulder. Hui Yuhao raised his right hand, then hooked his thumb and middle finger together and flicked his own clothes. He frowned and said, "Where did this flea come from? It's so hateful. Whatever, I'll make sure to crush it to death sooner or later." Once he'd finished, he opened the door to his room and entered with Wang Dong. Hui Yuhao's voice had been very loud, while the acoustics in the Grand Imperial Star Hotel were also pretty decent. These two things caused Xiao Hongchen's face to twitch slightly as he squinted his eyes. However, he didn't seem angry. Instead, a thoughtful look had appeared on his face. His strength wasn't the only reason that he'd been able to become the new commander of the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's team. He also had a brain. "Why did you stop me?" Wang Dong suddenly asked once they'd entered the room. Hui Yuhao forcefully smiled and said, "What would you have done if I didn't stop you? Did you plan to suffer the consequences?" "I activated my spiritual detection the moment I saw that person, which he seemed to notice right away. Furthermore, the soul power fluctuations that his body was emanating far surpass ours. Based on his soul power fluctuations, I'm afraid that he has 5 soul rings." "What?" Wang Dong was instantly taken aback. "No way. He doesn't even seem that much older than us. He ought to be a reserve member of the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, but a soul king at that. It can't be that he also disguised his soul power like you did, right?" Hui Yuhao shook his head and said, "Is it really that easy for someone to mask the fluctuations of one's soul power? Anyways, he hadn't even released his martial soul yet." The warm mysterious heaven technique intertwined with Wang Dong's light-attributed soul power, then quickly gathered to form their torrential Haodong power. Once it had, it began to circulate throughout their bodies. Following Wang Dong's breakthrough to rank 30, Hui Yuhao had also broken through to rank 27. Currently, when they joined hands and circulated the Haodong power in order to utilize a soul skill, the true might of their attack could compare to that of a soul ancestor. This was a massive amplification in terms of martial soul fusion. Their cultivation was also close to each other's. The higher their cultivation level, the stronger the circulation of soul power, and in turn, the speed of their cultivation. Using their Haodong power to cultivate was equivalent to them cultivating with the same speed as a soul ancestor. Their cultivation was advancing by leaps and bounds. Hui Yuhao had only broken through to rank 27 around 10 days ago, yet he already felt like his soul power was nearing the middle stage of rank 27. If he continued at this cultivation speed, it wouldn't be a dream for him to break through at a speed of 1 rank per month, until he reached rank 30. Wang Dong wasn't left in the dust by Hu Yuhao's speed, as his body seemed to be able to support more soul power than even Hu Yuhao's, who had twin martial souls. He felt no sense of blockage whenever he circulated his soul power, and he also felt as if he was growing stronger every day. In the few months since school had started, he'd already broken through to rank 32, yet he was already charging straight ahead towards the rank 33 bottleneck. With the help of their current Haodong power, it was possible that he might break through to the Soul Ancestor stage within a year and a half. Currently, Dai Huabin was unquestionably the second-year outer courtyard disciple with the strongest soul power, as he was currently at rank 37. However, Wang Dong was beginning to feel more and more confident that he could surpass him in 2 years' time. On the other hand, Xiao Xiao's cultivation was slightly slower than theirs. Despite this was only because she was about to break through her soul elder bottleneck. Once the first round of the knockout competitions finally ended, the spectators that had been watching the match in Star Luo City were all riding on an emotionally driven high. Due to this, there would be people queuing up deep into the night every day of the tournament. Even though Star Luo Plaza had an extremely large surface area, there were still some limitations as to how many people it could contain. It couldn't satisfy the needs of the masses. The government officials from the Star Luo Empire naturally increased the entrance fee in order to regulate the queue and to ensure that it wasn't too congested. Because of this, the empire made an enormous amount of profit, thus it was only natural for the Star Luo Empire to contribute to the rewards for the tournament. It was the same every year, however the rewards were never expressly stipulated. As no country would ever want to lose face, they'd always present very good things as rewards. Why did the competition rules stipulate that the first cycle had to be a knockout competition? Besides the simple fact that it reduced the number of academies participating in the later matches, it was also in order to make the competition more exciting. Today was the 4th day of the tournament, and screams from the spectators had been constantly reverberating throughout Star Luo Plaza since early in the morning. There was only one reason for this, and that was because the team representing Shrek Academy was finally going to appear on the field again. Furthermore, they would be appearing in the first match. Even the Emperor of the Star Luo Empire, who would only occasionally grace the city with his presence to spectate, had mounted the lead position in the Imperial City at first light, and was currently quietly waiting for the match to begin. For the Emperor to do such a thing, he was giving Shrek Academy quite a lot of face. They were here to spectate the tournament. More accurately, they wanted to once again experience the shock that occurred on the first day of the tournament. They wanted to see the youth who came from Shrek and the Tang sect, and see whether he really had 600,000-year soul rings. Shrek was Shrek, the Shrek that had 10,000 years of glory. Practically every single academy had unconsciously set it as their target, yet deeply revered it. Even the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy wasn't an exception to this. When the dark green-clad team from Shrek appeared in the participants' entrance tunnel, the atmosphere of the entire Star Luo Plaza started boiling. Loud cheers for Shrek began ringing out from the areas closest to the entrance tunnel. Hu Yuhao walked expressionlessly at the very front of the team. Since they wanted to assume an air of power to terrify their opponents, they would naturally have to go all out. Ma Xiaodao, Dai Yueheng, and Ling Luochen simply didn't bother turning up. They chose to stay in the hotel to recuperate and make their recovery as fast as possible. Shrek Academy's resting area was located the furthest north, making it nearest to the city walls. Furthermore, their resting area was clearly larger than that of the other academies. The entire area had a total of 20 sofas and was staffed by an attendant. A table beside the sofas was filled with food, fruits, and drinks in order to cater to any needs the participants might have. Just how was this a tournament? It was practically a VIP spectator area. In reality, the other academies weren't treated much differently than them. However, they didn't have any attendants. But more importantly, their areas were much smaller than Shrek's. Every resting area only had 7 seats meant for the official team. The preparatory team, or substitutes, could only stand behind the others. At this moment, the host was already building up the tension in the arena. He first announced the names of the academies that had already passed through the first round of the tournament, and then proceeded to introduce each team in more detail. It was just as Wang Yang had predicted. The group that Shrek belonged to only had a total of 8 participating teams. Shrek Academy was naturally the most popular team in the entire tournament, overshadowing any and all other teams in the same group. After all, Nobody had ever seen Shrek Academy put into an awkward situation where they had to put on a false strong front. Other than the participants' resting area, there were also waiting areas located by either side of the enormous tournament stage that were used by the delegations of the various academies, who would be fighting on stage. After spouting a load of bullshit that stirred the emotions of the crowd, the announcer used his most impassioned voice to cry out, "Now, let us have the continent's #1 academy, the representative team from Shrek Academy, in addition to their opponents, the representative team from the Star Luo Empire's Cloud Luo Seoul Engineering Academy, enter the waiting area. May the leaders from both teams please step onto the stage to confirm the mode of battle." The difference between the two academies could be seen from their introductions. When the announcer introduced Shrek Academy, he didn't mention the country it was located in. However, he would do this for the other academies. This was because no country would dare to claim that Shrek Academy belonged to it. Even the Heavenly Seoul Empire, which Shrek technically belonged to, wasn't an exception to this. Shrek Academy had its own Shrek City, the status of which was so incredibly high that every country had to give it an extremely high amount of respect. When compared to Shrek Academy, the Sun Moon Imperial Seoul Engineering Academy was also comparably powerful. However, it had a much weaker foundation. Because of that, they could only compare themselves against Shrek during the Continental Advanced Seoul Academy tournament, and use that to stimulate the explosive growth of their students. The referee shouted, 3, 2, 1. Bei Bei and the opposing team leader simultaneously exerted force, throwing the large sphere into the air. If no small balls dropped out from the larger ball during this process, the referee would turn it over after catching it. The ball which dropped out then would be their mode of combat. If a small ball dropped out while the larger ball was in the air, that would represent their mode of combat. This was the round-robin tournament's first lot drawing, and it was extremely successful. When the two leaders threw the large ball 20 meters into the air, a small ball dropped out. There were 3 small balls, each with their own distinctive color. They were red, yellow, and blue respectively. Red represented the team fight, yellow represented the 1v1 fight, and blue represented the 2-2-3 fight. This time around, a small yellow ball dropped out of the large ball. The referee caught the small ball as he retrieved the larger ball, which was falling back to the ground. After allowing both leaders to take a look at the smaller ball, he looked towards the Star Luo Emperor, who was seated at the top of the city walls. The latter gave a signal, and the announcer used the Seoul loudspeaker to make an announcement. Shrek Academy's fight against Cloud Luo Academy will be conducted via the 1v1 knockout mode. May both parties please send out a single member to take part in the competition, 1v1. After hearing that the competition was to be conducted in such a manner, the audience's eyes lit up. Every single member of the audience who could see him, in addition to the students from the various academies, who had Hu Yuhao in their line of sight, cast their gazes towards him. They all hoped that Hu Yuhao would be the first person to come out, and would complete a 1v7. Wouldn't that be the most satisfying outcome they could watch? Who wouldn't want to feel the excitement and thrill that came from the appearance of 600,000-year soul rings again? Both leaders glanced at each other, then stepped down from the stage. Bei Bei had already received instructions from Wang Yang before the lot drawing. Wang Yang had told him to come back down after the lot drawing, regardless of the format of the competition. Bei Bei hurriedly returned to the waiting area, then cast an inquisitive gaze towards Wang Yang. "Teacher Wang, I'll go." The moment Shu Sancha heard that he was going to go out first, he immediately stood up excitedly. Bending his right arm, he flexed his muscles and said proudly, "Just watch me." With that, he took large strides towards the stage. Bei Bei turned towards He Kai-tu and asked, "Don't you think he's a bit thick?" He Kai-tu laughed naughtily. "A bit." Jiang Nan Nan snorted, "Extremely thick." Shu Sancha, who hadn't walked far, stumbled and nearly fell down, but he clenched his teeth and walked up to the stage. The first student sent out by the Cloud Luo Academy wasn't tall, but his shoulders were very wide. He was even somewhat fat. His nervousness was visible on his face as he faced the tall Shu Sancha. Beads of sweat could already be seen on his forehead. Any academy would be nervous while facing Shrek Academy, this was to be expected. At such a young age, Hu Yuhao had revealed such a prodigal amount of strength. Wouldn't the somewhat older person in front of him be stronger than his junior? This seemed especially true when he looked at Shu Sanchi's fierce appearance. He began to feel weak inside. He subconsciously wiped his sweat with his sleeve, causing the spectators to burst into laughter. Hu Yuhao not coming up to the stage had disappointed a large number of people. But this was still one of Shrek Academy's matches and they quickly got excited again, prepared and curious to see how strong Shusansha, who was decent looking in terms of power, was. The referee called the two of them to him and said in a low voice, "The rules of the 1v1 knockout round state that the loser has to immediately step down from the stage, while the winner can choose to either continue fighting or switch out. Each party has 7 people, and the competition will go on until all 7 people from one side are defeated. Understand?" "Understood," Shusansha replied in a very straightforward manner. However, his opponent was stammering. "UN understood." The referee said, "Okay. Both parties, return to your sides. The match will begin with my call. You're not allowed to use stationary soul tools, or any soul tools that have a high degree of killing power." As he spoke, the referee began to step back. However, the student from the Cloud Luo Academy squeezed out a smile and said to Shusansha, I am called Ma Yingjun 1. Senior, please go easy on me." The corner of Shusanshi's mouth twitched as he said proudly, "Are you as handsome as me?" Ma Yingjun hurriedly shook his head to the point where his brain shook like a drum. No. Satisfied, Shusansha nodded. "Fine. I'll go a little easy on you." Shusansha arrived in front of the platform and put a thin cigar in his mouth. Afterward, he used a small lighter-type soul tool to light the cigar and started to smoke, holding it crookedly in his mouth. From his appearance, he didn't really seem like a good person. Even the audience went into an uproar after seeing his behavior. Cloud Luo Academy was also angered. This guy was just too arrogant. He even pulled out a cigar just as the match was about to start. Was Shrek Academy so lax when it came to their students? The referee also furrowed his brows. Nevertheless, he didn't take action. First, there wasn't a rule that forbade a student to smoke. Second, he didn't want to offend Shrek Academy. "The match can commence," the referee shouted as he retreated to the edge of the platform. Cloud Luo Academy's Ma Yingjun had been waiting for these scary words all along. When the referee gave the signal, his short and stout body quickly reacted. He lifted his arms, and 3 metal pipes as thick as thumbs came out of them. 2 metal pipes as thick as his arms came out of each shoulder. The wings on his back also quickly unfurled, and his 2 stout legs also produced 6 metal pipes. On his chest was a soul tool that resembled a heart protective mirror. It was obviously a shield-type soul tool. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was armed to the teeth right now. Shusanshi's body didn't change drastically like that. A somewhat unremarkable black tortoise shell appeared in his right hand. At the same time, 4 soul rings, 2 yellow and 2 purple, started to shine. 4 soul rings. The spectators were quite disappointed. He had only 4 rings. Many of them were looking forward to seeing some 100,000-year-old soul rings. Among the spectators, the ratio of soul masters was less than 1 to 1,000. Most of them were only there for fun. Very few knew just how precious a 100,000-year soul ring was. The difference between Shusanshi's soul release and Hui Yuhao's incredible performance from yesterday was the same as heaven and earth. Therefore, it was no wonder that the spectators were disappointed. But at this time, Shusansha did something very unexpected. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.